Was forced to betray my best friends and destroy their reputations. When I found out what they planned to do, I knew they weren't my friends anymore. I made sure they would never try something like that again. Growing up, I was a bad kid. I didn't care about anyone but my friends. Jay, Daniel, and Bruce. We used to steal from stores and family, swear and throw things at random people walking down the street, and we were smoking from the age of 12. They were my real family. Or so I thought. When I was 16, my parents had finally had enough of my behavior and I was sent to a school for troubled youth. It was more of a military institution that taught discipline in the most brutally effective ways you can imagine. And it worked. By the end of my second summer, I was a different kid. These people taught me that real men simply don't act the way I did and that the path I was headed down would lead me to jail or to my grave. When I came home, I was accepted back with open arms by Jay, Daniel, and Bruce. At the same time, I was determined to prove to my parents I wasn't the same screw-up. So I followed their rules and thus only really talked to my friends during school and football. One day after practice, I came into the locker room to see my 3 friends alone, chatting and laughing. I joined in on the conversation and it was going fine until my friend mentioned a college party they were planning to crash. They were saying they've been doing it for a while and it was great because of the easy girls and booze. I was hesitant about it because I didn't think my mom and dad would agree to let me go. But then Jay started talking about this girl from our school he was planning on inviting. He started to tell both my other friends and me that he'd been trying to get her into bed for a while, and she kept making excuses. So he planned on bringing her to the party and doing it with her there. When I asked him, in a joking way, "What makes you so sure she won't reject you again?" he looked me dead in the eye and said, "In all seriousness, I'm just going to slip something in her drink. It'll loosen her up, no problem." At first I just kind of awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some kind of messed up joke. But they weren't laughing with me when I asked him if he was serious. He told me he was sick of her games and knew she was just stringing him along. "It will make things easier." I couldn't believe my ears. I felt ill. I excused myself from the conversation pretty quickly and practically bolted home. I spent the whole night convincing myself my friends were just messing around. A few days later, during yet another after-school training session, we all ended up last in the locker room. Jay did something I never would have expected in 1,000 years. All 3 of them had been talking about the party this whole time. When Jay began rummaging through his gym bag, he said, "Look at this," and tossed Daniel a bag with small pink capsules inside. Immediately I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't stop thinking, oh my god, this is real. They weren't joking. It's hard to describe how I felt in the moment when Jay began describing in detail what he planned to do. I was sick. I couldn't take it. And again, I ran off. I actually did end up puking later that night, going over and over in my head, what the hell I had just witnessed. I almost couldn't believe it. These 3 boys have been my friends for 15 years. I thought of them as my own family. I thought I knew them better than anyone. But 1 year away in this, I actually broke down crying that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I am ashamed of is how long it took to actually get a grip and handle it. I knew I should have told someone, but in some messed up way, my loyalties were still screwed. Don't crucify me for it. I know now what I should have done. But I was 17, and these were my best friends. I didn't want them to get into trouble, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't let this go down. So instead of reporting all I heard to an adult, like anyone else would have, I decided I'd sort it out all on my own. I went to Jay and told him not to do what he had planned. I told him it was stupid and dangerous and would ruin both his life and the life of the girl. He got right in my face and told me that the school I got sent to had turned me into a coward. Then he said something I'll never forget. He told me word for word, "I'm doing her a favor. I'm going to show her what being with a real man is like. After this, all she'll want to do is thank me for saving her." I saw red. Without thinking, I punched him straight in the nose. We fought for a bit and ended up getting suspended for fighting. I couldn't believe it. I was seething. My best friend had just told me he was going to victimize an innocent girl at a party, and I was a coward for not wanting to join in. I was disgusted and sickened to my core. Most of all, I was done with him. My parents were disappointed I had gotten suspended so shortly after coming home, but I just sat quietly while my mom cried and my dad screamed at me. I know I should have told them then and there, but I still had this insane notion in my head that I had to get them back on my own. After a weekend of being grounded, I went back to school and the first thing I did was seek out Jay. Daniel and Bruce were standing with him. I forced myself into doing something that disgusted me then and still disgusts me now. I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry I hit him and that he was right. I had changed, and I hated what that school had done to me. I lied and said, I want to go back to the way things were before. They ate that crap up right away. Jay and I even hugged it out, and I put the cherry on top when I told them I'd be coming to the party. My first course of action was recording them whenever we were alone. I wanted to get everything they said about the party and the girl they were planning on victimizing on tape. I knew I needed some kind of proof, or it would just be my word against theirs. After a few days, I had more than enough to end things there and then. I wasn't done there though. Sometime during the following week, I tracked down the girl, took her aside and told her everything. Understandably, she was furious and scared. But I begged her not to go to the police or tell anyone. I know now that was stupid as well. But for some reason, she listened to me. I had a plan, a crazy, stupid plan to teach them all a lesson. I told her to tell Jay that she was going to meet him at the party, but to just stay home. Later that day, Jay started bragging about how the girl had accepted his invitation and everything was going to plan. I sat there 4.5 out my pocket, recording all of it. The night of the party rolled around and I snuck out since I was still grounded. I arrived at the party and as the night went on, Jay became more and more frustrated that the girl hadn't shown up. I made sure to keep an eye on him the whole time, just to be sure he wouldn't just pick a random victim since she hadn't come. Matter of fact, I was keeping tabs on each and every one of them, watching as they drank and drank while I stayed as level-headed as possible with some water and a beer can. When midnight came, all three of them were plastered. It was my time to shine while they were all occupied with a drinking game. I hunted down Jay's bag and took out the capsules. I'm not proud of what I did next. I slipped one into each of their drinks and I waited. It didn't take long before all three were passed out on the floor. I then took out a black permanent marker pen from my bag and wrote exactly what they were on all three of their foreheads. I'm not going to say exactly what I wrote, but it starts with an R. I took pictures and immediately uploaded them to our school's Facebook page. I knew they would be taken down, but by that point it was too late. It was a small town and word got around fast. When I got home, I got yelled at by my parents for sneaking out, but they stopped when I finally told them what had been happening. They were both shocked and didn't believe me at first until I showed them the recordings. They sat in silent horror as they listened to Jay and the others. I was silent in the car as my dad drove me to the police station, receiving a lecture about how I should have just come to him in the first place. And what I'd done at the party wasn't necessary. My phone had already blown up with other students commenting on the pictures I put on the Facebook page. As expected, the recordings were enough to get them all charged and arrested. I likely would have been arrested too, had the girl not told the court that I warned her not to go. I was charged for my use of an illegal substance since I admitted to using the substance on my 3 ex-friends. But luckily I never got jail time. I did end up with a bit of community service, though. All three of them were tried as adults in a case of attempted assault, but only Jay got actual jail time since he was the one who got the capsules and was the only one who admitted to wanting to use them. The other two only got probation and community service for being accessories, but were completely shunned in our town. No one ever let them forget.